Hi and welcome to today's video where hopefully I can cascade from my experience, expertise, and knowledge to help you be a better informed business leader in taking decisions with minimum risks and simplicity about where you're heading and how you will get there, help you pivot and reinvent yourself as needed, attract, keep, motivate, and empower people around you, help you even find a sweet spot that will keep most stakeholders happy with your performance and management style, lead the way into new horizons with elegant simplicity, but not forgetting your competitive advantage, and make sure you focus on this. And last but not least, increase efficiency, profitability, and productivity without stepping over dead bodies. Now, let's deep dive into today's topic. Hi everyone, and welcome to today's video where we're gonna be talking about the antichrist of free trade, which is protectionism. Okay? Might have heard this term before. It addresses several forms. And it actually represents government stepping in within the trading processes between countries and economies with several policies. And this is from several reasons. One of them is because when producing something, not everyone might play a fair game. And the policies in one country might be more flexible than in a different country, which means that the end product might not be produced going through the same processes or keeping the same quality standards or healthy standards, okay? But usually you would see governments stepping in with protectionism policies to protect their own industry. Okay, to safeguard domestic industry, you would see these protectionism policies because as part of their political campaign and political agenda, maybe the primary goal over there is to preserve local jobs or to promote a self-sufficient economy. I think we already consumed this topic that it's very hard, close to impossible to have a self-sufficient economy unless you want to deprive people from what is out there globally accessible and available for them. If you want to take bananas and pineapple and I don't know the diversity of cars and computers off the market, and your population, your citizens can live without that, then you can encourage a self-sufficient economy. Just to make like a funny joke on a side over here. But what I've seen is that too much protectionism might lead to a more patriotic feeling. Like we want to be this strong, self-sufficient, independent economy, but it is creating massive atrocities in terms of inefficiency, okay? And in terms of ambition to reach a certain quality standard and a certain cost of production and accessible price to take your product or your specialization as an economy, as a government, as a company to the next level. And this is because you get relaxed due to lack of competition, due to lack of having to go through the pain points to produce something in a very lean and streamlined way to actually set it at a very affordable price, because the government will cover your back, whether it's through tariffs, quotas, subsidies, or even talking about voluntary export restrictions. So these are the four policies through which a government could put in protectionism and define this word of protectionism, and they are ways for the government to fight against free trade when needed. Okay? So let's take the first one, tariffs, okay? This is a form of tax that is applied to imported goods from different countries to make sure that somehow the domestic industry is protected, those jobs are kept, and it's also an ideal way for governments to make sure that they actually have a source of income coming to the state budget over there. Okay? So most of the times I've seen this, especially where there's a huge price difference between imported goods and local goods. I am a big fan of red wines. We have a very strong and industry of red wines over here, and with a very long tradition. But there were several occasions in which you would have wines from LATAM coming into our country, which, if they were to be put on the same shelf with Romanian wines, we wouldn't have stand a chance, especially in a country in course of development where the consumer is extremely sensitive towards the price to sell our wines. So the government needed to step in and make sure that this industry that has just flourished recently and which is starting to be a business card for this country is somehow protected, and domestic consumption of wine is encouraged by putting a tariff over there on wines coming from Chile, Argentina, or Brazil. So this is one example that I can give over here of how a government can step in through a protectionism policy using tariffs, okay? So moving forward, there are quotas to mention. Now here we limit things, okay? We limit volume of trade that can go between countries over a specific period of time. Okay, so this is what we should understand through quotas, that the government imposes trade restrictions to limit monetary volume of goods that a country can import and export during a particular period of time. Okay, now they might do so, and this is because they would like to keep a balance between what gets imported and what gets exported in the overall economic balance of a country or a government within its mandate. So this is again another weapon through which we can put a brake over there and make sure that some form of protectionism is instituted between the companies that countries. I'm treating countries in this example as companies. That's why I made this mistake. Between countries during a specific period of time. And just remember, when we talk about quotas, we talk about limiting or restricting volume. Okay, volume, quantity. Okay, that's why quotas. Now, the next tool to instate some form of protectionism is known as voluntary export restriction. And this comes with a real case study. You can check this online. And now the American government called the Japanese government a while ago and said, we are kindly asking you as a government to have a self-imposed limit on the quantity of goods that can be exported within our country, because it is hurting severely our automotive industry. There was a situation when the hockey stick effect of selling Japanese car was absolutely incredible in the US, and if it wasn't for the government to ask the other country's government to put a voluntary export restriction over there, they would have put Ford and General Motors in the ground, and as Americans were switching more and more and more to Japanese cars because of their viability in the long run and how efficient they were made, how well they were made, and how economic they were in the long run. Okay? Now, you would most probably ask, why would I, as a government that I am selling right now, would even consider putting a self-imposed limit on the quantity of what I'm selling over there? And this is because I don't want to jeopardize my diplomatic relationship with that country that gives me the possibility and opens its doors for me to sell in that market. And so there is a political, economical, and social angle to consider over there. And there are other ways in which that country can make you pay. So you might win the war, let's say, or really dominate the market on the car industry, but then again, what about the tuna imports, or what about the sake imports, what about the rice imports? You don't want to cascade or spill over those industries over there. So from this point of view, voluntary export restriction is triggered by a specific country that sees such a phenomena in their industry, and it's a way of protecting their domestic industry also. Now, if you thought that only in some countries there's a price sensitivity or a price elasticity when the clients are buying or citizens are buying something, now forget that. This is in every country, in every world out there. Price matters, okay? Now, if you can get something for a lower price that will satisfy your need and take you from A to B and give you what is needed, you're going to take that product. So be very, very careful in underestimating the importance of price elasticity with respect to certain goods, okay? And last but not least, it would be subsidies. So subsidies are a way of protectionism. On the domestic market, they can be great. By subsidy, we understand the government giving a sum of money to someone to produce something at a lower cost. Okay? So if you're producing bread, the government might subsidize a part or a vast majority of the cost of flour so that for the domestic population, that product will be extremely accessible and at a low price despite of inflation, despite of economic downturn or upturn, in order to make sure that food is accessible, or some sort of food is accessible to its citizens, okay? Now, that sounds very positive in theory, but what if we take this game and we no longer do it for the sake of our domestic company, but instead we compete on a global market? Now that can create some strong imbalances. And I'll tell you about a case study in which I was personally involved working with a client that manufactures products which are made out of plastic. And let's take buckets, for example, plastic buckets. And we just had invested in a new technology line, and we were competing with other countries from Central and Eastern Europe, and we clearly had the competitive advantage of lower labor costs. And this opened some doors for us to make serious exports, right? And we were on a very good path over there. Although we had to fight our own bureaucracy and the lack of infrastructure over there, it would have compensated the fact that we had the technology and the folks at a lower cost to make this happen and export it to a larger market such as the European Union. But then in our way, we discovered that there were governments starting to step in within this industry, wanted to take a personal pride by becoming a very industrial-like engine of the European Union in terms of production. And the government stepped in and started subsidizing the cost of making that bucket. So what happened is even with better technology, even with lower salaries, we were behind in that competition because 50% of the cost of producing that bucket was subsidized by the government through a political campaign in which they were trying to transform a specific country in the producing or the production engine of this continent. So it was great, and I'm very happy that that we see these policies and we see this economic intertwine and intervention of the government. But it's just an example of how it severely affected us, and our profit margin really took a hit because we had to cannibalize them in order to stay on the market with someone that doesn't have a specific part of those costs of production like us, because their government stepped in and subsidized that. So I hope you have a pretty fair picture over here and good understanding of what protectionism is and which are the means that a government could actually exercise or flex their protectionism muscles. And keep in mind that all of these tools need to be used within a balance so that you don't burn bridges with other countries with which you invested so much time, history, and efforts to actually reach this diplomatic level. Thank you.